So we've talked a lot so far about the people element of social business and collaboration, but let's turn now to the technology. How specifically are IBM solutions addressing the needs of users in this new dawn of being more collaborative and more social? Perhaps we could start with the role of IBM Connections.
Connections has made a profound difference to the way that we work internally, and while we do offer the technology externally, what I think is more valuable are the lessons that we learn as a part of deploying that internally. So yeah, all the technology is available. You can take Connections, you can deploy it, you can embed some enterprise content management with that, some reporting with that. You can do a number of different things. It's really helped address the way that we work internally. So it comes back down to people, but ultimately people want certain capabilities. So Connections has become a platform in its own right. So we're using Connections to mine the data, where we've embedded Connections within our Salesforce automation environment, and we're now open sourcing that to embed with SugarCRM. We've exposed Connections from a mobile perspective. We're using Connections to create data about who's an expert. We've got social question and answer type capability, again, which sits on Connections. We embed Connections as everything we do. We work on communities, we work on responses to proposals within it, we create activities and activity templates, which we then use as templates for things like onboarding and campaign management, and it's become intrinsic to the way that we work. And the discussions that we have with clients aren't typically about why Connections is a good platform. It's typically about, here is how it's fundamentally changed the way I use it today. Here's why I save many hours per day, because I do things differently. And it doesn't come down to it's a social network discussion. It comes down to, would you like to travel less? Would you like to save money? Would you like to reuse the content you've got? Would you like to sit and do more on your iPad instead of your big laptop or your desktop? Would you like to do something without relying on a VPN because the social tool is inherently secure because of the way that we've designed it? Would you like to structure your buildings differently because you can now do things in a different way? Would you like to have meetings differently? Those are just different types of discussions, and all of those are underpinned by the way that we've used Connections and are now offering them externally. In addition, I think we're also clothing a number of our competitors' products with Connections. We're saying, you want to use Outlook? Great. We can bring a social dimension to it. We can bring a content reuse aspect to it. You'd like to use Outlook and Word? Great, we can do that. We can embed instant messaging. We can embed video feeds into that. We can embed content that sits in your Connections environment and provide that through a same-time meeting type capability. And you can do it on a mobile device. You can do it on a browser. You can do it on a desktop. It's effectively about a pervasive experience with their technology, and Connections and the way that we've developed it as a platform means that that's a normal discussion now.
And Connections has obviously, like any technology, any platform, evolved since its first iteration. How have users changed the way they interact with the technology in that time? How are use cases perhaps differing now from five years ago or so?
So users, when Connections first came out, treated Connections as they would an external consumer-oriented capability. It was in their mind Facebook for the enterprise. And our first version of that sort of satisfied those capabilities. We never considered it Facebook for the enterprise, but it had profiles, it had communities, it had the ability to share files. What we have done, though, I think, is to progress it in different chunks. So the first version primarily took external consumer-oriented stuff and delivered it in an enterprise way. The second version primarily looked more at the user interface. How do we make it a bit more accessible? How do we make it a bit more intuitive? The third version, again, added little bits and pieces but made it far more usable. We integrated it far more with Outlook and with Explorer and with Office. The fourth version then started focusing a lot more on the integration capabilities. So how do we embed mail access within a social environment so that people aren't driven back to their inbox, but they sit within a social environment, and yes, they can use mail. Again, you could use Domino as a backend, you can use Exchange as a backend, but you have a single unifying social experience. But since you're there, why mail something? Why attach something to a file when in fact you can share it with one person and then potentially reshare it with other people, or then reshare that with the community? And most stuff that we use email for isn't really one-to-one, it's not personal. Mail should be there because there's often a need for a very private conversation. And if you can't have it face-to-face, and if you can't have it on a phone, and you'd like there to be a record of it, which typically is what mail is used for, mail is the place for it. But actually, the way that we've integrated things means that people are now more open to the art of the possible. So we embedded mail, we've embedded enterprise content management so that people can have a secure, governed repository sitting within a social context because they have all of this content sitting in ECM systems. How do they socialize that in a controlled way? How do they bring a workflow that sits in an ECM environment and complement that with the ability to share with the right sort of people or expose it to the right sort of people? Similarly, the use of reporting for analytics. How do we understand what people are doing? You know, the ability to audit the sort of transactions if that's of interest to you, if you're in a highly regulated environment, how do we do that within Connections in a way that satisfies people who are highly regulated? Those are the things that now exist. In addition, we've also focused a lot on the multi-tenancy capabilities, the cloud deployment capabilities. So that's very much a focus of Connections. You know, it's a cloud-first type mentality. And cloud-first isn't there to say, what we want you to do is put it on the cloud. From a development perspective, what we're saying is, we'd like you to have the option of putting it on a cloud, but those same things that are delivered with a cloud deployment are exploitable internally. So the ability to multi-tenant, the ability to deploy rapidly, to de-deploy rapidly, to get metrics on who's using it and how they're using it, all of those are absolutely valuable in an on-premises environment.
How much of the evolution of the platform has been driven in response to customer feedback?
Customer feedback is critical to the way that we develop things. It's so easy from a development lab perspective to say, I've got something which is awesome, it's cool, people will love it and no one will use it. That is the curse of many organizations and many lab-centered organizations. Fortunately, IBM has taken a very customer-centric view to say what works, what doesn't work, how does it work for you. In addition, we are our own biggest customer, so we see the things very early on that work. Now, we try loads of stuff internally. There are many awesome things that I use on a daily basis that never see the light of day externally, because while they are a really good experience, there are some fundamental things that probably don't work as well as they could, and you know, they're just not going to scale, or they're not going to be as useful to people outside my industry. So those things that tend to work very well, you know, on a very large install base, tend to work well for other clients, and we then get feedback. We've got a very vocal fan base or user base. Some of them aren't fans, and they come back with really good, useful, critical information. We're very open to that. And externally, we have Connections-based communities where people say, I think the product's brilliant because of X, or I think it sucks because of Y, and I'd like you to fix the following things. And they aren't just isolated communities where every now and again someone dips in. We've got very senior managers who sit and look at the stuff, provide comments on the stuff, and those things are incorporated into our products. We're very, very focused on ensuring that it's relevant and useful and adds to what they're doing on a daily basis.